Welcome back to the Trade Broker's Diaries special video on the Joker Broker. I'm your host, Muhammad Bey. Let's recap from the first video. The rise of the Internet has given rise to the Internet broker. Along with it, a lot of assumptions about doing business as a trade broker internationally. Simplest form of possible ways to do trade deals. It's the easiest road to quick riches, or that's the impression that people get when they think about it. They think that they can sit at home in front of their computer and do a few Skypes, a few emails, maybe a couple of conference calls, and get lucky. If you're fortunate enough to have that kind of experience, good luck. The experience for most people is not going to be so cut and dry. One sad truth about the whole Joker broker phenomenon is that some people do not want to do the work. They don't really want to be trade brokers. What they want is attention. These people are attention whores, and they tend to waste people's time, and they're easy to spot if you know what to look for. I was having a conversation on a LinkedIn forum at one time some years ago when a young man kept interjecting his comments. I was talking to people, going back and forth about a trade issue. This young man, whose name I don't remember, constantly kept writing things saying how he thought everyone was a joker broker, how the deal wouldn't go through, how all of us were false and a bunch of liars. But he wasn't really keeping up with the conversation. And finally, I had to write to this young man and tell him, please excuse yourself while the adults conduct business. He actually did stop pestering the rest of us. But it was only after I acknowledged how irritating he was that he finally stopped annoying those around him. As I said, this individual just wanted attention. As I said, there are many roads an individual can go down. One of these roads is becoming an import-export agent. And in this program, I'm going to lay out the steps that you need to take in order to become an import-export agent. Bear in mind, this is not going to be some quick fix. The entire process could take many months or even a couple of years, perhaps even longer. But if you're willing to commit yourself to the idea of being an international trade broker with all the benefits that this implies, then maybe you can be a success. Here we go. First, you need to understand what is involved in international trade and import-export. The basic outline is this. You need to have at least a fundamental understanding of the world of banking, of the world of freight forwarding, and the world of international business management. If you are not at least familiar with these areas, or savvy enough to get other people to do the work while you just look good and take all the credit, then you're not going to succeed. Historically, the people who have made the greatest fortunes in the world usually had an expertise in one area or another. Those who made the biggest money in the diamond mines in South Africa had backgrounds in geology. Those who had made their fortunes in oil also had some backgrounds in geology and perhaps engineering as well, because they designed their own derricks and new drill bits and this sort of thing. People who made fortunes in automobiles had experience in engineering, designing first bicycles and wagons, and then later on the early automobiles. So if you're going to go into the area of import-export, just remember you're going to need an education. And that's where the first step is. Get yourself a degree, either a bachelor's or master's, either in international political economy or international economics. Now bear in mind this will give you some basic conceptual and maybe even mathematical tools that you're going to need in order to understand and profit in international markets, both established and developing markets, by the way. Just because you're in a market, say, somewhere in Africa or somewhere in India or Southeast Asia or some parts of South America or Middle America or Central America, as they call it, don't think that you don't need these skills. You may, in fact, need them even more. Second, a degree in these fields and those that are closely related will provide you with an insight into the kinds of problems and the benefits of international markets in general and your area of focus in particular. So bear in mind, it's going to take some time for you to get the kind of information, the kind of skills and knowledge that you're going to need. You must become fluent in the basic jargon, as they say, of import-export, of the laws, transactions in currency, policies regarding trade, and all of the politics that goes along with making trade deals. Without this kind of background, the job that you're going to do is going to be just basically out of reach. Number 2, decide on a specific area of specialization. Don't play this game where you think you can be all things to all men. I mentioned this in an earlier video, and it bears repeating. You need to focus either on a product, such as an agricultural product, or some area related to agricultural products, if that's your area, and also pick an area of the world, such as India, or China, or some part of Africa. Don't take on the whole continent of Africa. It's way too big. India and China and the United States and much of Western Europe can fit neatly into the continent of Africa, with plenty of room left over for New Zealand and Madagascar. So don't try to take on the entire African continent. Pick a country and go with it. One of the important aspects of being an agent and having a career as an agent is to be fluent in the legalities for both sides of the transaction. You can learn this by going to law school, of course, and learning the various kinds of law. Wherever you focus, be sure to focus on one of the political and geographical areas. Don't try to take on an entire country, even a small country. You can focus on one area and still succeed. Step 3. Study a native language. Any agent worth their salt is going to need to focus on one language and the basic protocols of that country. There is no guarantee that all the documents that you're going to be dealing with are going to be in your native tongue. Now, it's true that English is the lingua franca of international trade, but don't try to rest on that laurel. One of the jobs of any agent is to make translations, or to pay for translations, or to otherwise get them done, and to be able to verify that those translations are correct. Even if you do it roughly, with speed and accuracy, it's better than nothing at all. Step 4. Study the politics of the area that you're focusing on. One of your jobs is going to be able to speak to your American importer or exporters about the dangers, the common problems, the opportunities that go along with that specific country. Any agent specializing, say, in Shanghai, for example, who cannot speak Chinese, whether it be Mandarin or Cantonese, is going to know very little about the Communist Party and their politics and the world of international trade as it revolves around the business in China. You are going to be next to useless in China, basically. There are 300 million people in China who speak English, and that number is getting larger every day. A lot of people who learn English don't necessarily want to learn it. They learn it because they're in school and they have to learn it. Many who do learn it, however, may not speak it well enough for you to understand. You will be lucky enough to find someone who speaks clear English and can help you deal with the pitfalls and landmines that you're going to deal with moving into a different country. Such an agent will just be laughed out of the business if they don't try to show some proficiency in a given language. You will be very fortunate if you go into a country, a foreign country where English is not the first language, and discover that all the business is done in English. Step 5. Research global economic trends. Now this is going to be the continuing education aspect of your work. Conceptual fluency is your #1 focus here. You need to accurately understand the trends. For example, let's take China. The Chinese government makes an announcement that it's going to increase investment capital in an area of environmental technology by, say, 5 or 10%. Chances are this is going to be obscure news around the world, assuming it even translated into English at all. Now, since you're knowledgeable about what's going on in China and in Chinese politics, you can read the basic news release yourself. You will have this information before anybody in the West has it, most likely. Therefore, you can quickly shift some of your own resources into that field and approach American firms specializing in environmental technology. This is how you build your business, by having some kind of inside track that no one else has. As they used to say, get there firstest with the mostest. One final thing before I continue. One of the most important things, one of the most important skills that you can develop as a trade broker is to learn to ask questions. And most of all, learn not to make assumptions about things on the ground. Don't take it for granted that just because the person you're talking to speaks English, that the majority of business in a given country is done in English. For example, I was trying to deal with some miners in Guinea earlier this year. They all spoke English. I talked them into making me their mandate. They agreed. They sent me a mandate contract. The contract was in English. But if you know anything about Guinea, the people in Guinea speak primarily French. And the laws in Guinea, the legal business of Guinea, is conducted in French. I didn't know this. My lawyer, on the other hand, did. And he warned me that contracts in English were not enforceable in Guinea if they were not in French. Now, the people who sent me this document knew this, but they sent it to me in English anyway. When I contacted them about doing business and getting a contract in French, they hemmed and hawed and stalled and made excuses. Safe to say, I'm not doing any business with them. This little point is important to consider, because it's these little things that make the big difference, especially in legal circles. If one period is out of place in a contract, your agreement can fall apart, particularly if you go into some kind of litigation and want to argue the rightness or wrongness of whether or not you should have gotten paid on a commission when a deal finally went down. And let's face it, this is the ultimate nightmare of every would-be trade broker: closing a deal and not getting paid. So remember that when you enter into an agreement with someone to be a broker, to be a mandate, be sure to ask lots of questions. Most of the time you're going to find that these people are hard-nosed, hard-bitten, hard-ball-playing business people. Sometimes it's going to seem a little intimidating, and you're not going to want to ask the hard questions. But if you do, trust me, the people you're dealing with will have more respect for you. This is how you will succeed in international trade as a broker or as an import-export agent. What you want to do really is go beyond the broker. Anybody can sit in their bedroom and dream of making $1 million. You need to put in some time, some effort, and some money to invest in yourself in order to become the thing you really want to become. Write to me with your questions. We're always happy to hear from you. As usual, with all of you YouTube and other file sharing service users, please always comment, rate, and subscribe. I'm your host, Muhammad Bey. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for coming to our website. See you at the next video, and take care.